everyone we're going to get. So my name's Scott Peterson with the Northwest Gas Association, and we're super pleased to have Aaron Blanton and Marina. I'm not even going to pretend to pronounce your last name. Can you?
No,
Sure.
no worries. Slijepcevic.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's good I didn't. We're pleased to have both of them with us today from GTI Energy, and even more pleased that they're going to share with us their thoughts on today's gas infrastructure as part of their RAISE initiative. Their thoughts on today's gas infrastructure and how it can evolve to support um, more of a low carbon gas infrastructure, hydrogen, RNG, and other low carbon fuels to increase resilience and affordability in our energy transition, which is super important to us, the Gas Association, and us, um, our members, the pipelines and utilities in the Northwest. So to me, this is a super exciting presentation. Um, Erin joins us. She's a vice president for the zero emissions systems team at GTI Energy, and has served at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia University School of International Public Affairs, where she also received her master's, but she led their natural gas research initiative and led their ESG research there too. So she brings a lot of experience to this. I'm glad Marina is joining her, and at this point, I will let the two of them do their thing.
Thank
Welcome.
you. All right, you guys should be
Thank
able to
you.
share your
Okay,
slides
so
now.
I'm gonna try to get those slides up too. So let's see how fast this takes me. Um,
I'll just say thank you so much for having us both. I'll just start by giving an overview of what this collaboration is, why we developed it and launched it, and then Marina will go into sort of some of the more technical detail, like our technical scope of work, and hopefully that will give you a sense of just what we've been doing and what we plan to do. I think the one you had before, Marina, was the one that, whatever the setting was before, I think we were seeing the full slide, but this
is
will,
this showing the full screen?
yes.
Okay, let me see here.
I don't know if I think before that it was, but I'll just start by saying we launched this initiative. This is perfect, Marina. Got it.
Okay, awesome.
We launched this initiative a couple of years ago, and really it was a response to what our customers were telling us was a lack of research and really just a place to be able to point to in trying to demonstrate the value of the natural gas infrastructure we have in place today, and also as you mentioned, Scott, like the resilience it brings, the affordability that it brings to customers, but also the potential it brings as we think about what our future energy mix may look like, and the ability to start to integrate some of these lower carbon fuel options. So we sort of set about saying what would be most useful both to the industry but also to other stakeholders, investors, consumer advocates, even regulators, as they're trying to get an understanding of why should we be investing in this infrastructure system, why is it important, what does it do for us, for our economy, and then what are the options as utilities or upstream companies or transmission companies are looking at different options, or talking to us about potentially hydrogen or renewable natural gas, and how does that fit in? What are the risks? What are the benefits? And it was really the goal of RAISE was let's provide research, resources, and a place actually to just collaborate and hear best practices and talk to other companies, and give those resources to you as the industry so that you have something to be able to pull from. And in the last few years, you'll see as we go through, I think we've actually really built out a pretty impressive research library as well as outreach program, because I'll talk about that in a second, which was part of our learning process. So we do this through various different mechanisms. We have an understanding, obviously, that parts of the United States, and as you are all in the Northwest know, the Northwest is very different, obviously, than the Midwest or the Gulf Coast region. And so part of our initial thought was, as we were looking at developing the research program, was that we needed to do regional case studies along with our more sort of national outlooks for the infrastructure, because we had to take into account those regional differences to make what our research the outputs applicable to those of you who are operating in these specific regions. So we'll talk through that in a minute. We also understand that a lot of the research it can go in depth. We can have research that's hundreds of pages long, and sometimes as a company or even as an investor, you're looking for potentially just research on a specific topic, whether it be about resiliency or underground storage or emission reduction technologies, that you want something that is short and concise that you can either share, read yourself. So we realize that it's wonderful for us to do, it's a really key pieces to do these big research projects or pieces, but also to have actionable, readable, short pieces to go with it. So that's another big part of what this initiative has been doing. And then that really key piece, which is we can write endlessly and publish endlessly, and make it available to the industry. But if we're not getting out there and sharing it with regulators and decision makers and policymakers, then it's not getting heard by the people that really need to understand this research the most. So that's sort of the next piece of it. If you go to the next slide, Marina. And so what we realized was for us to build a real collaboration and to get the voices and hear from the industry at large as a whole, we needed to have obviously as many companies involved in this collaboration as possible. And I will start here with a very open pitch that we are constantly looking for additional partners in this collaboration. The more participants we have, the more value this collaboration can bring to each participant and to the industry at large. So we've built, as you can see, a pretty strong collaboration trying to represent all of the regions of the United States, large and smaller utilities. We also have a number of midstream partners represented there. And that's really been beneficial in us in terms of understanding these companies are at different phases of either even on their emission side or how they're looking at these different low carbon energy, low carbon fuels. So it's really been, I think, the main value that this collaboration brings to the participants is two pieces, the research that's being provided, but also as these opportunities to collaborate and hear from other companies that are also trying to demonstrate, why do you need to invest in our infrastructure, why it's so important, what it brings. And so being able to do this as a group really, really adds value to our members. On the next slide, please. So I just want to say just to give an idea of what have we done for this year, for example. We have completed our first case study, which was of the Gulf Coast region. It's all publicly available. The other thing we have felt and we've learned at GTI Energy is we can diffuse a lot of the partisanship and politics around this infrastructure by being as transparent as possible with what we're doing. And so with our collaboration, what we publish, it goes very public, it's all public. How we come to our conclusions is public. And we feel that's important because as an industry, the value of this infrastructure, right? There is nothing to hide. We can demonstrate it. Our studies prove it. Our research proves it. But we want to make sure it's accessible. It's not hidden behind a paywall or it's obscure how we get to our answers. So we do really make sure that everything is very available and accessible to whoever wants to read it. The other thing we've done is, so we have the Gulf Coast, and Marina will go into more depth, but we've done the Gulf Coast case study, and now we are almost completing our East Coast case study. And we've made sure, again, that not only we're doing this research, but we're getting out there and talking about it. We did an in-person workshop in Las Vegas around the Gulf Coast. We have done a lot of presentations to external groups and bringing in external advisory groups to input into our research process and our conclusions, as well as doing presentations like this to really fantastic groups like the Northwest Gas Association. And then we've also made sure that on our modeling that we have a really trusted partner to do that. So we've been doing this work with KeyLogic and have found them, again, to be a really good partner in how we work. And this, in all of this research, it's being done with our sponsors and partners, are inputting the whole way through the process. So how we're reviewing, what we're taking is our different scenarios, looking at the draft research, looking at our conclusions. This is a very collaborative process. And as I said, that's why it's so important for us to have as many participants as possible, because it gives us additional voices and perspectives. And so in addition, the short papers we've done this year are looking at underground gas storage in the two regions we did the case studies, as well as looking at resource considerations for a low carbon natural gas industry. That's coming out. I think that's drafted, right? And so it will be published soon. And then our next paper is actually going to be really around that reliability piece, and just because it's so key and so essential, that should be coming out early next year. In addition to that, we have started, and again, I'll let Marina go into more details about how these have worked, but we realize, as I said, we have to get in front of the actual decision makers and policymakers to make sure that these findings and the work that we're doing is really getting to the people who need it. And a part of one of the other drivers for us to launch this collaboration was there's a lot of knowledge gaps from people who are trying to make decisions about whether utilities should be allowed to make these investments. So it was making sure that we can serve as an educator for commissions, for state regulators. And we've actually started, we started last year and this year again, going into the state commissions, to the staff, to various groups, and actually educating them on the natural gas infrastructure system and the various pieces that we're looking at within this collaboration. And we'll talk, as I said, a little bit more about that when Marina takes over. On the next slide, we get asked a lot, well, how does the governance structure work of this collaboration? How much time does it take if you are a member in it? Is it a huge lift? And we have it structured so that we have a board committee where if you were a sponsor of this collaboration, if you're a participant, you usually have somebody who sits on the board. We do quarterly board meetings, and that's really when we sort of give the overarching direction. Here's what we're thinking, here's the research that we're thinking about doing, getting the feedback from the board, and that's quarterly. So we have a number of companies who really just will attend those quarterly board meetings. But in addition, we have a lot of our participants take part in our monthly technical meetings that we have with our own GTI Energy subject matter experts like Marina and others. And that's really where we start to get into the technical details of our research, the scenarios, the short papers, and really sort of to go into a deeper dive into those. Those are monthly. So we have a number, as I said, a number of companies will have either several participants, they'll rotate what subject matter expert attends those, depending on what the topic is, what the agenda is. And then in the regional case studies, for example, next year, we do the West Coast case study, we can have West Coast utilities participate in the actual sort of case study group. So there's more of a technical deep dive for that specific region. And so the utilities that want to participate in that for their region are able to do so. So there's lots of different avenues to participate and at different levels. And you can have, 4 or 5 people or one person, really depending on the level of involvement that you want as a participant. On the next slide, Marina. So just to give a sense, I sort of went through what we did this year. This is to give you a sense of the timing of that. Really, we try to make sure that we're having in-person meetings twice a year with these, around either the case studies or another reason, but we're actually giving the opportunity for people to be in person. Again, we do a lot of the, a meeting, the sort of cadence of meetings generally are online, but we do try to make sure that we gather in person. And then we try to make sure that there's publications coming every quarter at least. And then the workshops have generally ended up coming in the later part of the year just because of scheduling. But we've been able to sort of get those at least, we try to get 3 to 4 workshops happening in each year. And that is a piece that will continue. We'll talk through that in a second. So this is sort of the way it looks like in terms of how things are timed. As you can see, we're getting to the end of the 4th quarter already. We're wrapping up that East Coast case studies. We're seeing, we just are participating this week in the NARUC AGA meetings as well. So we really are doing that outreach piece that is so important to make sure there's a better understanding of why this infrastructure system is so valuable to our economy and to our customers. So that's a really big component of what this collaboration is about. So Marina, if you go to the next slide. I will hand it over to you. Technical scope, right there, the magic words. So Marina.
Sure. Yeah. So Erin's touched on this a little bit. It's a little bit of a repeat of some of the information provided before, but really the RAISE program has 3 technical focus areas. One is really establishing baseline data and identifying research gaps for decarbonizing natural gas systems. And really trying to understand how natural gas systems can change in future energy systems. And so we've talked a little bit about how that might include blends of emerging fuels, and that's sort of the basis for these regional case studies and understanding how we can scale those. But also understanding where infrastructure can be repurposed and reutilized while we're modernizing current infrastructure. So there's obviously a lot of modernization efforts that are going on currently. So the topic of discussing how we can scale emerging fuels is something that can definitely be considered parallel with the modernization of natural gas systems. And so with this research analysis, we're trying to provide stakeholders with information and data tools that can really help them communicate the value and role of gas infrastructure in energy systems, but also provide context for different types of investments that can extend the life of natural gas systems that we rely on so much in the country now. And so this information really feeds into these actionable recommendations from the analysis that we are providing the sponsors with and also viewers of the reports. And then also really communicating some of the challenges. Obviously, with this effort, we're finding information gaps and we're finding areas where research still needs to grow. And so this is another value add of trying to understand how to scale emerging fuels in different regions of the US. And then thirdly, there's a really important aspect to this is really trying to understand some of these region to region policy considerations. We know that across the country, the prioritization of modernizing infrastructure varies, and also the interest in renewables and decarbonization varies as well. And so, really, out of this effort, we're hoping to provide some of that regional context for how feasible or supportive certain regulatory bodies will be in certain areas of this decarbonization analysis findings that we provide as well. So that's a little bit of sort of the structure of our program. I'll continue. And so with these regional case studies, as Aaron mentioned, the first one we did was the Gulf Coast regional case study. And we were really trying to understand the feasibility of scaling gaseous fuels that can be blended into natural gas systems. And so that's really, today it's hydrogen, RNG, and SNG. We also looked at the potential for CCUS to support SNG production. And so we followed the PAD region definitions. And so you can see for this particular case study, this includes New Mexico, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. This is a really interesting region. I'll talk about it a little bit more after the slide, but for the fuel cases that we considered, this included 8 pathways to produce hydrogen, 4 pathways to produce RNG, and 4 pathways to produce SNG. And so a huge aspect of trying to understand how feasible it is obviously the economic component. The other aspect is the reduction in emissions potential per fuel case, and then also understanding some of the regional economic information. So we deployed OL NEMS modeling, which is basically providing a context for different economic scenarios and how that affects prices of fuels, and also demand expectations based on those assumptions. I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then cost benefit analysis of those particular fuels. So really trying to tie back how much are you reducing, how expensive is it, and how does that actually factor out? And that's really the aspect of the cost benefit analysis. And so some of the high level findings that high level key findings that we found with this report. One is that repurposing existing infrastructure helps promote energy security and also avoid stranded assets. The cost difference between repurposing natural gas infrastructure versus uh, essentially constructing new pipeline is hugely different. And so actually leveraging the existing infrastructure that already delivers to the high demand areas is more economical. We also find that these types of emerging fuels can complement renewable energy expansion and foster emissions reductions. The concept of blending and also leveraging some of the renewable energy assets that already exist in the area um, essentially creates value for existing renewable fuel producers that have renewable electricity producers that are not able to interconnect at the moment. And then also, we find that policy incentives are still required to make emerging fuels economically competitive. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So this is a really generalized figure of how the case study is conducted. So there's the aspect of understanding what are the emissions reductions, and so that's incorporated in the life cycle analysis for each of the fuel cases. Additionally, there's the aspect of understanding the costs, which is incorporated in the techno-economic analysis, and this information is fed into the National Energy Modeling System version OL NEMS. And so really that's helping you understand the long-term energy productions and the demand and prices that you expect under different economic scenarios. And all of this information is really feeding into a cost-benefit analysis. And the basis of this is to understand what is the break-even CO2 emissions price for each of the considered fuel cases. And we calculated this in three different ways. One where the economic incentives essentially promote emissions reductions. Also, in a scenario where economic incentives do not promote emissions reductions. And then the third scenario, it basically representing what OL NEMs would consider is a required incentive. So these three provide different context for what we might see are actually the required incentives in the region. Um, so I'll talk a little bit about the resource availability in the Gulf Coast. One thing that I really want to mention is resource availability and also the location of resources is really an important aspect of scaling emerging fuels. It can tip the carbon intensity and it can tip the also the economics if the actual feedstock is not within reasonable distance to the delivery infrastructure for each of the emerging fuels. And so we really looked at a variety of biomass resources and also looked at existing landfill gas recovery and then also renewable electricity generation. And we painted a picture of really what the Gulf Coast looks like. And what we understand is that from state to state, these resources vary significantly. And there's really no perfect solution for the entire region. Each state has its own constraints and also economic considerations to consider. New Mexico is very different from Texas. We understand that the price of natural gas is significantly different, and also the access to renewables is very different as well. And so really that's a huge takeaway of this case study analysis is that um, while we understand that there are some regional takeaways, we know at the state level there's definitely some state level considerations that need to be made. The Gulf Coast, as I mentioned, is a really unique region. The low cost of natural gas, especially in Texas and Louisiana, really impacted the results for certain hydrogen pathways. And as you may know, the Gulf Coast has been talked about as a major hydrogen hub. And so there's really good reason for that, for the extensive integrated infrastructure. And there's definitely a huge component of this really being driven in Texas in the future if these renewables start to really scale. So that is sort of a little bit of a snippet. It's not full scope information dump on you, but I just wanted to kind of share just a few kind of takeaways from this Gulf Coast case study report. And so currently we are finishing up the East Coast case study. And we kicked this off this year in the summer. This covers 17 states. And we also had a workshop on actually I think it was last week in Pittsburgh to really go over some of the preliminary findings and get feedback from sponsors. And throughout the process of this case study, we have been advised by our external advisory board, which is made up of academic subject matter experts, as well as the regional focus groups. So these are actually East Coast operators that are kind of shining a light on some of the challenges and considerations in the East Coast to really guide the direction of the case study as well. And also, as Erin mentioned, we have been doing educational workshops with public utility commissions. And really, the importance of this is really to just provide a good summary of where natural gas systems are and so understanding the role of natural gas as well, how important it is in our energy, basically how important natural gas systems are to meeting our energy demands in the country. And then also talking about the current maintenance and modernization of natural gas systems, how we've gone from some of these aging pipes, and then um, per PHMSA's guidance, we've seen huge changes in pipeline materials. And then also how we quantify emissions and monitor emissions of natural gas systems. And then looking to the future, some of these future gas system fuels that could be blended, but actually are already being blended in natural gas systems as well. And so talking through some of the sort of methodologies for quantifying the impacts of these fuels through life cycle analysis and techno-economic analysis, and then talking through how they can be produced, and then what are some of the technical challenges of integrating them. And so we've held several workshops this year, and we've gotten a lot of interesting feedback from public utility commissions. And we've summarized that in documents published on, I believe it's on the RAISE website. Sorry if I'm misspeaking there, but there's been some definitely interesting feedback and perspectives, especially at the state level. Each of the states that we've talked to have different priorities and focus areas that they really tried to communicate to us. And really, this was just very short sessions, 3-hour sessions, and it was led by our GTI technical experts. So I'll pass it over to Erin for the RAISE 2026 goals.
Yeah, thank you, Marina. I think one thing to know that I think was interesting to us, and I know you were at the actual workshops, but some of the questions around even doing like pipeline replacement, right, and the understanding of that actually as sort of a key decarbonization tool was a point I think that was sort of not fully understood by some of the commissions, and they saw it more as a municipal right disturbance, and then trying to sort of make the case as to why it is so important to do those pipeline replacement programs. And I think a lot of questions around around the emission technology and how to incorporate those things. So it really does, at least my takeaway from when you're looking through the summaries, which you're right are on the website, is that it really does fill in a lot of the knowledge gaps. And I think and not only have we noticed that they get a lot out of the workshop itself, but we get a lot of so I think a lot of follow-up engagement in the states that we've been, which I think is another really great value that comes from it, is that then we become sort of a source, this sort of ongoing source of information and research for those states. So just in terms of, and I do want to give, I know that Jude's been asking for questions, but I do want to give some time for questions at the end of this, but just to give a sense of what are we doing next year? What are our plans for next year? So for 2026, we have 3 additional case studies that we're going to embark on, and we hope to have completed. I see. Yeah, I'll answer that question in 1 second. So we're working on the West Coast, the Mountain, and the Midwest. And we're also understanding that now we really looked at all these, we're looking at all these regions, we'll have the data from these regions, but there are some overarching key takeaways that we can put into more of a national roadmap, an R&D roadmap on the technologies, on the costs and things like that, and pull something that really is useful on a national level and really focus on the R&D element as well. So that's on our goals list for next year. Continuing to do this kind of outreach, as well as having our focus groups for those regional case studies. Again, it's been a lot of good value for the utilities that have been involved in our specific regions to be able to do that really deep dive with Key Logic, with the GTI people, with the other utilities in the region, as well as some midstream partners have participated as well. And then to continue to focus on these short papers as well. As I said, we have the one that's looking on reliability that should be out in January. We're going to be focusing on workforce development. We have input from our participants and sponsors as to what do you want us to focus, what is useful research that you feel is a gap that you want to see, you want to see us work on next, in the coming months or coming year. And so that's really, these papers are responding to those needs. And again, we're looking at doing additional state commission workshops. We've been doing basically partnering in advance of the workshops. We do a partnership with AGA. We did one for Washington State where Ashley Duckman will host the utilities in that state ahead of time. We go through, okay, here's what we're presenting on, sort of what Marina was going through the agenda. We share the slides so the utilities are aware, like we're not going to go into your state and talk to your regulators without you knowing, what are we doing? What is the purpose? What are we saying? And making sure that we have an understanding of what the industry is thinking or concerned about, and potential things that they would like us to highlight in terms of the research findings. So we do definitely do this. The outreach is always a collaborative effort as well. So I wanted to make that clear. But I do want to see, this is, a snapshot. Hopefully we've given a good sense of what this collaboration is trying to do, and, doing our work for next year, and how we operate. So if anyone has questions, we are here to answer them. Oh, there was a question. I'll share in the chat our website. So there's a RAISE website on GTI's. It might be in our last slide. Is it, Marina? I don't know. We have another one. Usually, the website is raise.gti.energy, I believe. Is that right? And you can find all the research there, and the summaries of the workshops are there. In fact, I'll make sure I get the link and put it in the chat now. So let me see if there are any additional questions. Nope.
So I saw you guys did this is Scott. I saw you guys did something in Washington State. Since that's part of the Northwest, how did that go?
Marina.
From my understanding, it went really well. And I didn't attend that one. I'm sorry, I can't give specifics on the spot, but I do know that there was some pretty interesting feedback on hydrogen and specific considerations for challenges with gas infrastructure because of the geography of Washington was mentioned. But I think, yeah, we should have that summary up on the website, but I can double check on that.
What these workshops, what are they exactly? What do you actually do?
Yeah, so we're briefing the attendees on I'll go back to the slide of this is essentially the structure of the workshop. And so we're firstly going over the demand of natural gas, the infrastructure, and helping them understand how natural gas systems can potentially change in the future. And then secondly, we go over some of the emission sources in natural gas systems, how they're measured, and then the estimates of natural gas emissions, and then how pipeline emissions are monitored and quantified, and then talking about pipeline integrity. So one of the things we talk about is pipeline modernization to protected steel and medium to high density polyethylene pipe from previously vintage plastics and unprotected bare steel and cast iron. And then just moving into these emerging fuels, really talking about that at the end. So it's really a briefing, a 3 hour briefing.
Is it is it something you do at like at the utility commission, or do you just um pick a conference room somewhere and invite people? I mean, what and who are the stakeholders you mentioned?
It is done at the Public Utility Commission buildings, yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's strictly Public Utility Commission attendees.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, great. All right, Aaron has posted some information in the chat. Maybe Judy, can you grab that and we can also follow up to everyone who's participating in this webinar, just send it to you as well. Does that make sense, Judy?
Yeah.
So we'll make sure everyone gets this information too. And then we'll also, correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, we're recording this, so this will be available on our website. The whole presentation will be available on the website too.
It'll be on our YouTube channel.
Our
And
YouTube channel, yeah, okay.
once it's posted, I'll send out a link where you can share the link. There will be a copy of the presentation in a PDF form for you. And then these other documents here, I'll link for you in that email as well.
Any other questions for Aaron or Marina? No. Well, you have some potential members on this call, on this webinar. What's your pitch to them?
Well, we're about to do, we're starting the West Coast will be next year. So I think it would be wonderful. You know, I think they get a lot of value out of participating in that regional case study. As we said, the more we have utilities from the region participate, I think the better the case study can be. And it also allows for that knowledge sharing to be able to get a really an understanding and sit in the room with Key Logic and our subject matter experts to actually map these case studies out. I think it's another, we've seen the sort of political shifts, and this is an opportunity to really stress the value now of natural gas infrastructure when the investment in natural gas infrastructure is, I know for different states, this is not, always the case, but I think there is an understanding with the demand that's coming from data centers and that we are going to need to continue to rely on natural gas. And we have an opportunity, I think, just to utilize this research and demonstrate you can do this and really continue to focus on the environmental benefits of continuing to use natural gas in the system and explore some of these other fuel options as well. And really, I think it really just builds that case for why this infrastructure is so important and the need to invest in it. So I think there's a lot of value in the work that we're doing. And as I said, it's very public, it's very open and transparent. And so I think it's a great tool for the industry and hopefully the utilities that want to participate. We have a flat rate for everybody. It's $50,000 to join for a year. And with that is all the meetings and all the research and we've got a lot of our participants are very I'm very enthusiastic about the collaboration itself and the work that's coming from it.
Great. Yeah, I saw in your list a lot of the members of the Gas Association are also already part of this initiative too, so that's great. All right, without any other questions, I'll just say, well, thank you, Marina and Aaron. That was super. I mean,